Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving headfirst into one of the most stressful, yet, completely universal experiences.
Well, absolutely. The social gauntlet.
The social gauntlet, that's the perfect term for it. And it really involves two huge sources of anxiety. First, just trying to figure out how to ask for something without sounding, demanding or entitled.
Right.
And then there's the second one, which is just so much worse. That sinking, paralyzing feeling when someone walks up to you, they've got this big, friendly smile.
And you know them. You know them.
You know them, but their name, the single most important thing about them, has just completely vanished from your mind.
It is the universal anxiety. And it always seems to strike the worst possible moment. So our deep dive today is, it's really designed to equip you for social fluency.
Social fluency. And that's not just like grammar or vocabulary, right?
Not at all. We're talking about social survival, real professional application.
Right.
We're looking at sources that describe politeness not as some fussy decorative thing.
Right, like an afterthought.
Exactly. They see it as an essential tool. It's a strategic investment. In fact, one source framed it so well, calling it an inexpensive way of making friends.
I love that. An inexpensive way of making friends. That just immediately elevates soft skills into, like you said, hard strategy.
It does.
We're moving beyond just, you should be nice. We're getting into the actual mechanics of how specific words and memory tricks can build smoother interactions.
And reduce friction, increase cooperation.
And ultimately, bolster your professional credibility. It's really about being more efficient in how you communicate.
Precisely. This is pure applied strategy. So our mission today is pretty concrete. First, we're going to arm you with a sort of linguistic toolkit, some really polite English expressions to help you manage things gracefully.
Okay.
Then we're going to tackle why names are so critical and why they just seem to disappear from our brains so easily.
$1 million question.
And finally, we'll give you what our sources call the brilliant people techniques.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, so these are the honest ways, the subtle ways, and even some borderline ingenious ways to get a name back without, catastrophic embarrassment.
So it's a deep dive into mastering social retrieval and finally conquering that horrible tip of the tongue feeling.
That's the one.
All right, let's start with that linguistic toolkit. These feel like the easy wins, the phrases that can just actively soften what you're trying to say.
They are. The whole goal here, according to the sources, is to avoid being too direct.
Which can come off as aggressive or rude.
Especially in English-speaking cultures, yeah. Excessive directness is, it's often penalized socially. The difference between an order and a request is often just a few carefully chosen words.
And that changes the whole dynamic.
It completely changes the dynamic. The less you sound like you're imposing, the more likely you are to get cooperation.
So what's the first, the most essential softener we should know?
Okay, so the first one, the absolute foundation, is the modal verb, could.
Could, as in could you do something?
Precisely. Could you? It's foundational. If you just say, can you, you're, technically asking about their ability to do the task.
You're right. Are you capable of sending me that report? Sounds a little confrontational.
It's a bit aggressive, yeah. But using could you, it shifts the whole question into a conditional space. It's more like asking if they'd be willing to or if the circumstances allow it.
So it adds a layer of deference. You're respecting their time, their boundaries.
Exactly. So, could you send me the report by Thursday? It's just so much better than the abrupt send me the report.
That distinction, ability versus willingness, that seems so small, but it's actually huge. It acknowledges the other person's autonomy.
It does. Okay, so let's look at another common pitfall. Just stating what you want to directly.
Yes, the I want problem.
The I want problem. Especially in a service setting or a formal context, you really want to avoid the direct, almost childlike I want.
So what's the professional alternative?
I would like. It immediately makes your request sound more formal, more considered, because you're using that conditional tense, would.
It's interesting that word would seems to create a bit of polite distance. You're expressing a desire, but it's sort of hypothetical. It's almost like you're subtly asking for permission.
That's a great way to put it. And you can follow it with an infinitive, like, I would like to have another coffee. Or just a noun, I would like another coffee. Either way, it sounds less demanding.
More considered. It signals that you recognize you're asking for something.
Exactly. Now, let's raise the level of politeness even more. Let's move into indirect inquiries.
Okay, so this is where you build in a bit of a conversational buffer.
You got it. You're acknowledging that what you're about to ask might be complex or take up their time.
And one of the most polite patterns for this, I've seen this used a lot in emails, is I was wondering if...
This one is fantastic for asking someone for help or gently suggesting something without putting them on the spot.
And the grammar is really specific here, isn't it?
It is. The pattern is always, I was wondering if, plus a subject, plus a past tense verb. So, for instance, I was wondering if you had time to help me. Or socially, I was wondering if you wanted to join me for dinner.
The use of was wondering, and then the past tense. It's like it suggests you've been thinking about this for a while. It wasn't just a sudden impulse.
That's the magic of it. It makes the request feel less sudden, more deferential. You're basically saying, I know you might not have the time or inclination, and that's okay.
So it also protects you a little bit. If they say no, it doesn't feel like a direct personal rejection.
The linguistic shield works both ways. It protects you from the sting of refusal.
Okay, what about a different kind of indirectness? Something more for like collaboration.
For that, you'd use a suggestive question. So, what if?
What if?
Yeah, so instead of just asserting a new idea like, we should try a different design, which can sound a bit dismissive.
Right, it can shut down the other person's work.
Exactly. Instead, you ask, what if we tried a different design? It frames your idea as a collaborative question. It invites their input rather than imposing your view.
That is such a powerful tool for building consensus. And the informal version, what if I helped you, is a really polite way to offer help.
It is. You look swamped. What if I helped you with your bibliography? It turns assistance into a question, not an act of pity.
Okay, now let's shift to those moments of social friction. You know, when you have to interrupt someone or you didn't hear what they said or the dreaded polite exit from a conversation.
Moments that are just ripe for accidental offense.
Totally. So interruptions first. What's the protocol?
If you need to interrupt someone who's busy, you absolutely have to use a polite prefix. You have to address the imposition right away.
So something like, sorry to bother you.
Sorry to bother you, or excuse me for interrupting. You have to do that first to politely get their attention before you launch into your question. For example, sorry to bother you, but do you happen to know what time it is?
That short phrase signals so much. It's respect for their time, for their focus.
It's non-negotiable. Now, what about when you miss something someone said? In some cultures, just saying what is fine.
But not in English? Oh man, saying what can sound so abrupt, so challenging.
It's way too direct unless you're, really close with the person in a very informal setting.
So the essential polite alternative is?
Pardon me. Or even just pardon. Or you could say, could you repeat that, please?
Pardon me. It signals you need clarification, but it doesn't sound confrontational.
Right. What's the blame on the circumstances, not on them? Pardon me, I didn't quite catch that over the noise.
Okay, and finally, the tricky art of saying no, polite declining and exiting.
Saying a flat no can really damage relationships. The sources all emphasize using phrases that express desire but then convey impossibility because of, some external reason.
Acknowledge the value of the offer before you shut it down.
Exactly. For declining an invitation, the absolute classic is, I would love to, but...
There's that would again. The conditional.
Always. You say, I'd love to join you, but we're going away this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You appreciate the invite, but you provide a quick, non-negotiable reason.
The key is that the reason isn't about them. You're not rejecting the person, you're just unavailable.
Right. And similarly, for ending a conversation, because you're out of time, you use, I'd love to hear more, but...
This is a professional lifesaver. You acknowledge how valuable the conversation is. I'd love to hear more. While clearly signaling your exit is due to something unavoidable, like, but I have to run to an appointment.
And making these small linguistic shifts, from direct commands to conditional requests, managing refusal gracefully, it just immediately makes you sound more professional, empathetic, and considerate.
And that's exactly why politeness is hard strategy.
Okay, let's make a transition now from linguistic strategy to, cognitive panic.
Here we go. The real social tripwire. The forgotten name.
The forgotten name. You mentioned earlier the amazing power that remembering a name gives you. Why do you think that power is so immense? And why does forgetting one feel so bad?
Well, I think it goes back to something Dale Carnegie famously said, right?
Yeah.
That a person's name is the most important sound they hear. When you remember it, especially professionally, it's like you're signaling that you saw them.
As an individual, not just another face in the room.
Exactly. It shows respect, attention, professionalism.
And the reverse is so painfully true. If you forget, it's not just a minor slip-up. They can feel, as one source put it, subtly disrespected.
Yeah, it implies you weren't paying attention. Or worse, that they just weren't important enough to remember.
It's a matter of social validation. And the pain of forgetting, for the person doing the forgetting, is actually rooted in a specific phenomenon cognitive scientists call the tip of the tongue state.
The TOT phenomenon. Okay, so what is that exactly?
Well, it's a really fascinating area of study. It's that incredibly frustrating state where we can access all the semantic information about something. You know, the meaning, the facts, the associations.
So you can remember everything about the person, where you met, what they do for a living, the color of their jacket.
All of that. All the semantic tags are there and firing, but you fail to retrieve the phonological information.
The actual sound of the word, the name itself.
The name itself. It's like the entire circuit is connected except for that one final switch.
Yeah.
And names are especially vulnerable to this because they're essentially just arbitrary labels.
That makes sense. A word like chair is connected to a function, a shape, a context. But a name like Richard or Penelope
Has no inherent functional link to the person's job or personality. It's a pure abstract label, which makes it harder for our brains to hook onto.
And yet, as the sources point out, it's not just an arbitrary label to them. It's deeply tied to their identity, their family, their whole history.
Right. Knowing their name is a sign that you've invested in knowing them.
Okay, so if we can all agree to stop saying, I'm just terrible with names.
Which is a belief you can change.
Right. Let's focus on prevention. What can we actually do in that moment of introduction to make sure the name sticks?
This is so crucial because prevention is always easier than a cure.
So what's the first, most actionable technique?
The first one is repeat and confirm. When you hear the name, you have to use it immediately. And not just in your head, you have to say it out loud.
So, it's great to meet you, James. So, James, what do you do? Something like that.
Exactly like that. It sounds simple, but people rarely do it. By saying it out loud, you're forcing the name through multiple neural pathways. You hear it, you say it, you process it.
And then you should use it again when you say goodbye.
Yes. It was a pleasure speaking with you, James. That sounds completely natural, and every repetition just helps solidify that link in your memory.
Okay, that's step one. What's technique number 2?
Number 2 moves into mental imagery. It's visualization. You have to immediately try to connect the name to the person's face because our memory is so visual.
So, like mentally writing their name on their forehead.
That's a simple one that works for a lot of people. I find it's even more effective to connect the name to a striking physical feature. It creates a more memorable, even slightly silly mental picture.
Okay, give me an example.
If you meet someone named Sarah who has very distinctive glasses, you just instantly create a mental tag, Sarah glasses. If you meet a powerful man named Leo, you link him to a Leo lion.
The more ridiculous the image, the better it sticks.
The better it sticks. The third strategy is association. You have to link the new name to something you already know.
Because our brains are better at remembering things that are already connected to existing knowledge.
Precisely. You're not adding a new piece of information to a blank slate. You're hooking it onto an existing memory chain. So if you meet a Penelope and you love the show Bridgerton, you link her to that character.
Or a Lincoln to the president. You're giving your brain multiple paths to access that name later.
And that can help you bypass that tip of the tongue block we were just talking about.
All right, and the last preventative technique. It sounds like this one takes some guts.
It does. Clarity is key. If the name is complicated or unusual, or you just didn't hear it clearly, you have to clarify it immediately.
Do not wait.
Do not wait. The sources are really clear on this. It is far better to show a genuine desire to get someone's name right away, rather than having to ask an hour later when it's much more awkward.
And it's all in the phrasing. Instead of saying, I didn't hear you, you could say,
something like, that's a beautiful name. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Could you say it for me one more time?
So you turn the clarification into a compliment.
And it makes the other person feel valued, not inconvenienced.
Okay, so despite our best efforts, prevention fails. The name is gone. Now we are in the retrieval phase.
And the sources all stress one thing above all else here. Act quickly. The longer you wait, the more awkward it will be if you ask.
You just have to rip the Band-Aid off, especially if it's only the second time you've met them.
Right. For those early encounters, the social cost of just being honest is actually really low. The awkwardness lasts for, a second? And then it's gone.
Whereas trying to fake it just makes the whole interaction tense and awful.
Okay, so we have 2 direct approaches. The first is honesty plus acknowledgement.
This would be phrase 1. I know we've met before, but what's your name again?
Yes. By acknowledging that you remember them, the context, the face, you soften the blow. You're not saying they were unmemorable. You're just admitting a common human failing.
Nobody expects you to remember every name after one quick meeting. It's safe, it's effective.
The second direct approach leans into a bit of self-deprecating humor.
This is phrase 2, right? The candid admission. You can say something like, with a little smile, I apologize, but I'm absolutely terrible with names, though I never forget a face. Could you please remind me what your name is?
This is so tactically smart because it completely disarms the person. You're inviting empathy by admitting your own flaw.
And a lot of people will just laugh and say, oh, me too, I'm terrible with names.
Exactly. You make the mistake relatable, and the potential for insult just vanishes.
But what if being direct is just too risky? You're meeting a big client, a new boss. You need to seem competent.
Right. This is where you need the smooth escape routes. And if you are lucky enough to be with a friend or a colleague, there's a beautiful maneuver called the third-party solution.
I love this one. It's like social judo.
It is. The strategy is to introduce the person whose name you've forgotten to the person you're with.
So you start the introduction, but you strategically pause right before you'd have to say their name.
You step in confidently and say, have the two of you met? Or, I don't think you two know each other. And that forces the mystery person to fill the silence by introducing themselves. Hi, I'm Bob.
Crisis averted. And you didn't have to admit a thing?
The key is you have to be fast and you have to be confident. You have to seize control of the interaction the moment you see them.
If you hesitate, you lose your chance.
You do. And in a more formal business setting, if you can't do that, the move is to secretly ask a colleague a quick text, or you lean over and whisper, help me out, who is that?
You can even frame it like you need to check the spelling for your records or something. It keeps up that professional facade.
It does. But that relies on having a good colleague, of course.
All right, let's get into the ultimate crisis scenario, the multi-encounter retrieval.
This is the big one. You've seen this person several times. They work in your building. They're at the gym. You absolutely cannot get away with what's your name again anymore.
At this point, it shifts from being a memory lapse to feeling like disrespect.
Or just negligence.
Yeah.
So this calls for some very subtle, very strategic maneuvers.
And it seems like the first one requires a bit of acting, the spell IT out technique.
The pretext here is all about accuracy for your digital records. You pretend you need their name to put their contact info into your phone.
So you have to create a believable setup.
Right. You approach them and say something like, we keep running into each other. We should probably exchange numbers. That's a normal social script.
Yeah.
Then you pull out your phone.
And this is the key line.
This is it. You say, I'm a real stickler for getting the spelling right in my contacts. Could you do me a favor and just spell out your first and last name for me?
So you frame the whole thing around being meticulous, not forgetful.
Exactly. You're signaling attention to detail, not a memory failure.
And now we get to the legendary recovery move within this technique, the tactical masterstroke, the last name dodge.
Yes. This is what you do if they only give you their first name. Let's say they just say, it's Bob.
Your instant reply, delivered with total confidence, is...
Oh, I know that. I meant your last name.
It's just brilliant because it solves the problem. You get their full name, but it also saves you from the embarrassment of having forgotten something as simple as Bob.
But we have to talk about the risk. There's a huge caution here.
Right. The Sam-Pam backfire.
The Sam-Pam backfire. This trick can just blow up in your face if their name is extremely simple. If they say, it's Sam, and you press for the spelling, and they go S-A-M.
And then you try the, oh, I know that I meant your last name line.
The whole thing falls apart. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. You needed me to spell S-A-M. You've lost all credibility.
So you have to gauge the complexity of the first name before you commit to this. If it's something like Pan, you're golden. If it's Pam, maybe move to the next strategy.
Exactly. So if spelling is too risky, you pivot.
Alternatively, you could use pronunciation as the pretext.
Yes. Asking, how do you pronounce your name? Or, I apologize, I just want to make sure I'm saying your name absolutely correctly.
And this one is great because, as the sources noted, something like 74% of workers struggle with name pronunciation.
So by asking, you're actually showing a high level of respect and meticulousness. It turns an awkward moment into a moment of grace.
Okay, now for the final, last-ditch effort. All else has failed. You see this person every day, you just can't risk asking.
This is when you deploy the nickname game. This one requires discipline. You avoid using their real name entirely by using a placeholder.
And these placeholders can be generic, like, hey friend or chief or boss.
Right. They just do the social heavy lifting so you can get through the conversation. Or they can be more specific and context-based.
So if they're always talking about their dog, you call them dog lover or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful, which leads to the absolute most critical rule of this strategy.
Which
Never tell them you're using a nickname because you forgot their real name.
never. You have to invent a plausible complimentary reason if they ever ask.
You have to. You say something like, oh, I always give cool nicknames to people I like the most, or you're just such a leader on this project, Chief, just fit. It has to be a positive thing.
Now, we have to address the most controversial part of this strategy, which is the endearment offensive.
Yes. Using terms like darling, honey, sweetie.
This feels like a minefield.
It is a huge minefield.
Yeah.
The sources are clear that regional culture is everything here. In parts of the Midwest or the South in the U.S., using terms like dear or honey can be totally normal, even a sign of warmth.
But if you try that in a corporate office in New York or California,
You could be seen as patronizing, offensive, demeaning. You risk completely alienating the person.
so the professional consensus is just don't.
Unless you are 100% certain of the cultural context in your relationship, avoid them. Stick to generic, non-gendered placeholders like boss or chief.
The ultimate advice for all of these maneuvers seems to be stay calm, focus on the quality of the interaction, not your own internal panic.
That's it. The goal is to make them feel respected, whether you happen to know their name in that exact moment or not.
So to wrap this all up, we've really mapped out this whole challenging landscape of social fluency.
We have. We've covered the essential linguistic tools, like using the conditional tense with phrases like, I was wondering if, to soften requests.
And those polite exits like, I'd love to, but that acknowledge value while still creating a boundary, they're all about reducing friction.
And then we organized the name retrieval into really 3 layers of defense. First, that immediate honest apology for early encounters. The self-deprecating, I'm terrible with names, could you remind me?
Then for repeated encounters, there's that clever, high-stakes, spell-it-out last name dodge maneuver, which you have to use with caution.
And finally, for long-term avoidance, you have the nickname game, which requires some real cultural intelligence and a good cover story.
But the key takeaway through all of this, whether it's prevention, like repeating a name, or retrieval, like the dodge, it all comes down to attention.
It does. As one source said, the greatest power is simply calling someone by their name because it proves you are paying attention. All these techniques are just tools to achieve that goal, making the other person feel important.
And that brings up a final point. Don't get so lost in the panic of trying to remember the name that you completely check out of the conversation.
Yes, that internal loop of what's his name, what's her name, makes you miss everything they're actually saying. It sabotages the whole interaction. If you forget, don't panic. Trust that you can navigate through it.
That's really invaluable advice. And it makes me think about something we often discuss, how silence in a conversation can feel so awkward, right?
Yeah.
Especially in cultures like the US or Italy. A pause feels like failure.
It does. But considering how much concentration it takes to really encode a new name, to form those visual associations we talked about, what if embracing a moment of silence isn't a failure? What if it's the ultimate life hack for social connection?
That's a really provocative thought. So instead of rushing to fill the void,
You just pause.
yeah,
In cultures like Japan or Finland, silence is often valued. It's seen as a sign of respect, of thoughtful consideration.
so the next time you meet someone new, instead of launching into the next question, you just take a beat.
Yeah.
You focus entirely on them, on their name, and use that quiet moment to actually register their identity.
It lets you focus, associate, and store that name away before you're ever under pressure to retrieve it. A simple shift in behavior that could turn an anxious introduction into a real moment of connection.
Something to chew on the next time you meet someone new.